Hello and welcome to The Found Cause. We have found our cause in serving the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm Michael, the man behind the machine, and to my virtual front, it's...
Sebastian, the archivist.
Happy New Year, Sebastian. It's been a little bit. How are you?
I am doing great, and you?
I am eager and saving up. I've had the flu. Family's had the flu for a bit, and in my flu-fueled rage and feverish dreaming, both you and I have been waiting for this episode since before the New
Mm-hmm.
Year, since last year. I had a interesting video pop up on my screen. In fact, I'll show it for those who are watching. Called "The Zoroastrian Schism: The True Cause of Europe's Decline," and I was like, "What the heck?" And I click on these things, I watch these weird history videos, and so I'm like, of course, we know what Zoroastrianism is. We've spoken about it on this channel before, but he's talking about the schism. Um, and turns out this guy, the Ark, is a neo-pagan. Like 37 minutes in is all I made it to, I think. And I was like, okay, I don't have time for this. But he's a neo-pagan, which maybe you should explain to the audience, Sebastian. What is this? Is it even worth discussing? Like, is it so fringe that it's not even worth discussing? What is neo-paganism?
No, neo-paganism is on the rise. It is not insignificant. So I think that it'd be wise for Christians not to obsess over it, but at least be aware of what it is. It is an attempt to revive and or reconstruct the ancient religions of, speaking in a U.S. European context, Roman Greco-paganism, Asatru, which is the Norse religion. That's at least what it's called in modern day circles. And in the East, in Poland, Czechia, Russia, Rodnovery, the pagan Slavic religion.
And this sounds again kind of crazy because we don't think of like pagans as what do you mean, like worshiping Thor, worshiping Zeus? Like, who does that? But I want everybody that may be old or young to take a step back for a second and see the interesting influence that this kind of stuff has. Like for years, Greek mythology has been taught, Roman mythology has been taught. We named the planets after Roman mythology, right? So like it's kind of in the milieu of culture, but nobody took it seriously. Throughout the Middle Ages, they were like fringe groups that would still worship the old gods, but they'd be persecuted heavily because, our forefathers were much less tolerant than we are today. And like whatever, these ideologies didn't win, and so we forget about them, and we just think of them as like mythology. So of course we know they're mythology. I don't know why, and frankly, I disagree with classical education, which is like medieval education brought to current day, which teaches Latin. A lot of Christians are pro classical education, but classical education, even in Christian circles, discusses and teaches Greek mythology. Why why are we doing that still? Like, this is a vestigial organ of education. Let's cut it off. But yeah, like the hardest men of the ultra far right, kick all the foreigners out, we got to make America a Christian nation baby groups also are super pro people reading like the Aeneid, which is a Greek myth thing, or the Odyssey. And you're like, what? Why? The Odyssey is not a Christian book. It is primarily about like demigods and appeasing gods, and there is some virtuous things there with like Odysseus honoring his wife, and per- persevering through hardships and whatever, some manliness stuff. And so I think the masculinity crisis that's like kind of old hat now. Like, masculinity had a
Mhm.
crisis, and now I feel like it's not having a crisis. Now it's having like a grand ascendancy where everybody's a manly man, and like they've all got different philosophies at how you can be super manly. So I think we're probably getting past the masculinity crisis, but as part of like the wave of men being ascendant right now, Eastern Orthodoxy is on the rise, and neo-paganism is on the rise, and like weird philosophies. Jordan B. Peterson is somebody I'd consider like kind of neo-pagan. He like took Christianity and tried to do weird stuff with it, but he's also like kind of pro-paganism as well. Um, the Odyssey is coming out as a movie. I don't know. We all. Oh, Percy Jackson. That's actually what I was thinking. My generation, a little younger than our generation, Sebastian and I, but Gen Z. Percy Jackson is like a very best-selling series. Rick Riordan is an author who's all about
Yep.
if the Greek gods were real, and like you identify with the main character who's a demigod born of Poseidon, and like that's considered cool. And yeah, so I don't think it's something to ignore, and clearly the numbers would show that it's on the rise. It's so tiny, though, it's kind of like it's always going to be on the rise, because like any growth at all means it's like, triple digit in growth. But the fact that this, I think more telling to me than like hearing about some neo-pagans practicing in some garden someplace in Poland, is that a trending video with tons of positive comments. Like the comments on these pagan videos are lots, and they're like very fervorous. May the gods of Europe call their children home. May the gods of all nations call their children home. Like I'm sampling here. Paganism makes much more sense as somebody who studies biology and ecology. As always, extra based and beautiful. Based meaning like manly and conservative, whatever. So you can see these comments are like very pro this kind of stuff. And it was freaky. It freaked me out. I was like, oh, yeah, I've heard of neo-paganism as like a fringe thing, but like here it is styling itself as like a man's man thing.
Yeah, in Eastern Europe, it's larger. There's hundreds of thousands of people that supposedly identify to one degree or another with neo-paganism, but in the West, yes, it's rising. In ICE, I shared with you and Theodore, who couldn't make it today, and that there's a neo-pagan temple once again in Iceland after 1,000 years. It's reopened. It's like, friends, I thought that was dealt with a long time ago. It's, reopen bad things, Pandora's box once again.
Yes, paganism is bad. We're going to hear the pitch here. And this is a video from this guy called Why a European Pagan Revival is Inevitable. There are different versions of paganism. This one happens to be like racist too, so like we'll put that in there. But YouTube is censoring a lot less than they used to, and so we get like the white nationalists and we get to hear them. And I appreciate being able to hear them so that we aren't caught off guard by their arguments if we hear them and we're able to combat them. So we're gonna hear a racist pagan. It's not necessarily indicative of all the pagans out there, but this one's racist. He expressly talks about Christianity though, and so let's hear him and rebuke. Also, Sebastian just so happens to be reading through City of God by Augustine, who was contemporary with these lauded gods of Rome and Greece, and had a lot to say about them. And so you may get some of that flavor in here too.
Oh, I hope so.
In 2016, the new atheist movement began to fall out of fashion as figures like Jordan Peterson spearheaded a Christian revival among young Western men looking for meaning and identity. But now we are seeing that wave has also passed, and something more unexpected is slowly but steadily happening, and that is a revival of traditional European pagan faiths. Why is this happening? I often talk about European pagan theology and morality in my videos, but I'm not going to do that here. Instead, I'm going to talk about why so many young men are returning to traditional European pagan faiths, why Christianity is failing to win over so many young men, and why I think a pagan revival is not only necessary, but inevitable.
So I'm just going to say, I kind of agree with him in the basic premise in that like it used to be edgy and youthful to identify as an atheist, and the new atheists are just like popular atheist people who made it big on YouTube 10 to 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago at this point. And like atheism was on the rise in the West for a while because that was edgy and non-traditional, and only grandmas and grandpas are into Christianity, and the kids, the smarties, the manly men, we're into atheism. But of course, anybody who's lived through that and saw it happen and go, those new atheists are gone. They're no longer popular because their ideas are boring and hopeless, and as the kids would say, cringe. They're cringe. So like none of those guys he saw are popular anymore. Sam Harris maybe, because he's like changing his flavor of what he talks about, but it's mostly not about atheism. Christianity is definitely ascendant on things again. Interesting. I couldn't tell you all the reasons why that is, but it is. I think ultimately because truth prevails. But so let's pick a new lie is kind of what the play is always, right? People don't like Christianity, so when it's ascended again, they're like, I didn't like atheism anymore because it's cringe, but not this, and so they're going to paganism. So this guy even admits that like it's a fad. The old fad was atheism, and now there's a new fad. I tell you, and here it is. Okay, fair enough.
People debate Christianity versus paganism, Christian theology versus pagan theology, Christian morality versus pagan morality. Not many people talk about this, but I think that one of the major issues Christianity is facing is that it has not yet recovered from the blow it was dealt by science. Again, not many people talk about this, but as we came into modernity and we began to get a better scientific understanding about how the world works, especially in regards to biology, things like evolution and how long life has been on this planet, these things presented major challenges to Christianity. Christianity runs counter to everything that we know about the way the world works, both intuitively and scientifically. And this is...
I only pause here to say I don't think he really gets into how it runs totally counter to us intuitively and scientifically. He alludes to evolution, so he's hoping that he's really hoping that you are somebody who used to believe and listen to new atheists, and then bought all their garbage, but now are disillusioned by them for whatever reason. So now you already have bought the fact that science disproves Christianity, which is totally untrue. And evolution is another thing that will like surely that will go through its phase of like becoming lame and unpopular because it is not true and it's not accurate to science. We could get into that, but this episode is already like going to be way too long. So I think it's interesting that he's claiming things without explaining how is Christianity unintuitive and unscientific.
Might I, caution to our friend here that don't throw stones in a glass house, because Greek and Roman myths are wild. Like one I thought immediately of is how are beings made? Uranos, the sky, has intercourse with Gaia, the earth, just like plows the goddess, and then things come into being. So I would caution on the science thing, because Greek myths can get really freaky.
Yeah, and you may be gathering that this guy, just based on these things, probably doesn't really believe that the pagan gods are real. He just is a fanboy of the gods, so he knows that they're fake, and he wants to live as if they're real, knowing they're fake. And I'll use a truism that you should live not by lies, but if you know something is false, don't believe it. Why are you doing that? So you can already get a flavor here that this guy doesn't really believe in gods at all, but he believes in pagan virtues. And so to better, this is like such a demonic lie, to better inculcate the virtues, to better like live out the virtues, you pretend like Mars is real. You pretend like the god Mars is real. You pretend like these gods are real, and then you worship them, but you don't really think they're real. You just do what our ancestors did to like get yourself in a fervorous state of pursuing these virtues. But like you understand like the human mind is weak, even our own. And so like when you start worshiping false gods, they become real in your mind. Like they don't stay fake forever. So it's just such a dangerous kind of mindset to live by lies.
Part of its selling point, it tells you, wait, you actually don't have to die. The world is suffering, yes, but if you act morally, you will gain eternal life, and you will see your dead loved ones again for all eternity. Actually, Christ is coming to save you. Rejoice. But at the same time, for young people who are now often coming from a position of atheism or religious unaffiliation, this makes it very unconvincing.
I guess this is how he's saying it's unintuitive, in that it's saying you don't have to die, even though we all see people die, and so therefore it's unintuitive to the regular human experience that you don't have to die. But like every single religion ever, excluding Christianity and including Christianity, has an afterlife. So I would say it's actually totally intuitive that we live on after the afterlife, as exhibited by every human ever, except for atheism.
Of Christianity's strength historically has been that it claimed that it was the one sole truth, the one true path to salvation, to eternal life. But now we can...
most religions claim to be the one truth, for what it's worth. Not why Christianity succeeded.
See that much of its theology is actually not true at all. And this may sound like a cringe Reddit argument, but it's actually something that's a big deal. It's actually very hard to get around. The history of life on Earth shows that neither nature at large nor man was ever in an immortal, perfect state. There was no Eden. This is a big, big issue.
Was there no Eden? Like, really, where is the proof? Your sad monkey bones? Like, have you seen early human skeletons? They're not humans often.
Alone invalidates all of Christian theology. We also know that man is only one species among billions which have walked this planet, making it quite improbable that the whole universe revolves around man. And there are many other issues which evolution and the history of life on Earth presents for Christianity. Like, we now know that there were many other hominids living alongside of man, and that humanity actually interbred with these hominids.
Oh man, I wouldn't want to make it about science because it is a red herring. Like, the science stuff is a total episode on its own, but he just keeps bringing it up. I think one of the more embarrassing scientific facts out there is that for years they have pushed this, and here he is pushing it. It's like he's looking at the evidence that disproves it and saying, oh, look, it proves it. For years they were saying that Homo sapien, our species, is like one of several potential humans, and there were like Neanderthals out there. I'm sure everybody's heard of Neanderthals, and that was like a totally different subspecies of human that's dumber and like bigger and caveman-like, and they were an unsuccessful species of humans. However, we've realized through genetics, modern genome analysis, that like several whole people groups in Northern Europe are related to Neanderthals, meaning like Neanderthals were just another human group. They're not a human subspecies. They're just another people group. Like pygmies are humans. Pygmies aren't a subgroup of humans. They're humans. They're just short little humans that bred weirdly in Africa, or like the hundreds of different races or ethnicities in the earth, that like we're all still Homo sapien, we just vary based on how we look. Neanderthals are just another people group, and the fact that we have DNA that proves that we've interbred should prove that Neanderthals were not a different subspecies. They were just another people group like many others. And so the fact, excuse me, that he's saying that we have this DNA evidence proving that these were not subspecies of humans, instead they were just ethnic groups like any other. And now he's like, modern science proves that we weren't the only humans, and also those other humans interbred with us and looked just like us, so they weren't subspecies. They were just like anything else. If you can interbreed, you're not really a subspecies, are you?
So then who qualifies for salvation? All the billions of animals which have lived, they do not get salvation, they do not get immortality, they just die.
So somehow that question of subspecies of humans now throws into question whether or not animals and man, like who gets salvation. Okay.
What about these other hominids? What about hominids that we interbred with? We are part of these species. Do they get salvation? Do they have souls? And the discovery of life on other planets, which I think we will soon learn is actually not at all uncommon, will only add to this
One day we'll find the intelligent aliens.
Theological dilemma.
A lot of assumptions, my friends.
Now, you can get around this by taking a symbolic approach, which is what Jordan Peterson did. And I think that's partly why he was so popular. He managed to basically sidestep the new atheists, the Sam Harris types, by taking a symbolic approach and moving the conversation away from what is literal, away from science and evolution, to questions of meaning and purpose.
Yes, and we disagree with this approach. Jordan Peterson, as he's saying, basically says, we don't care if Christianity is true, like literally. We care if it's like virtuous. And so he takes the like atheist approach, but for Christianity, which is also dumb.
Yeah. Thanks, Origin, if you know your church history.
Not the first one to do that.
And I'm not at all against taking a symbolic approach. When I talk about the meaning of pagan myths, I do this all the time. But again, Christianity makes a claim.
There it is.
I'm going to do the same fallacy thing. Great.
Yeah, but you can't. This is where we throw in the City of God, which has been insightful because Augustine lived during the fall of the Roman Empire, which is cool on its own, what a life, but also was contemporary to actual Roman pagans. And he criticized them and engaged with their philosophy. He engaged, obviously not live with Cicero and Marcus Varro, but he did engage with their writings and with philosophers that would still quote them in his day. And what this guy is doing is what Augustine criticized the philosopher pagans of his time of doing. They want their cake and eat it too. It's like they want the wonderful virtues, they want the glory, the honor, but they don't want that all the skeletons in the closet that come with that. Because there's a lot of baggage. It's not just, if you open up the Roman mythology, it's not just honor, glory, justice, all these virtues. You also get all the myths. You also get all the weird rituals. If you truly identify as a Roman pagan or a Greco-Roman pagan, you cannot divorce the religion from their place, the theater place, and their rituals. According to Marcus Varro, one of the most renowned Roman pagan philosophers of the time before Christ. He lived more or less around the year 50 BC. He said, that theater plays are religious acts. They're not just philosophical, wonderful things to think about. No, these are important. Why am I emphasizing the theater? Because they are obscene. If you have actually seen, not live, but if you've read about Greek plays, they're obscene. The myth of the Cybele, Cybele, I think is how you said in English, Michael, that was brought from Anatolia to Rome in an attempt, I guess, to say that the Romans were Trojans. It's like kind of like mix and match these myths. During the play, there's very graphic, obscene things such as an actor pretends to castrate himself in honor of the myth, because it's part of the legend of Cybele and what happens there. And then you have other strange rituals such as if it's too graphic, the orgies at Corinth, for example, in the fertility temple there, Aphrodite, I believe, was worshipped in the city of Corinth up in the Acropolis. So the priests and the priestesses would have orgies in honor of the gods. You can't divorce that from all these wonderful virtues that the philosophers love to talk about, because it's part of the religion. They're just hiding it in all the skeletons in the closet.
Yep. and I'd love to hear the pitch. I think it's impossible really to make a neo-pagan revival that doesn't have all that stuff, because you may pitch like, let's drop all the ceremonies that are crazy and just keep the ones that aren't crazy, or make up some ones that aren't crazy. But like, because you aren't principled and you're making this up right now, somebody's going to come along, one of your crazy followers, and make a cult. And like, that's one of the biggest problems with paganism in the past. And like, to quote Marcus Warrow and stuff, is they wanted to constantly trying to reinvent paganism because of the excesses of cults and like the foolishness of the masses. And the masses would come up, they'd like get really into Dionysus, and we all know Dionysus is the god of wine and partying and stuff. And so the cult of Dionysus is like insane, right? Really evil and destructive for society, and really popular. And Greek philosophers would talk about why like you shouldn't worship like that, and Dionysus is actually a lesser god and he's not the main god like some people make him, and whatever else. And Marcus Varro and Marcus Aurelius and other great manly pagan philosophers were tried to unite paganism into really worshiping one god, and like, yeah, like Athena is real, or like Zeus is real, but he's just an aspect of the main god, and we should really be worshiping Sol Invicta or some other central god. And like, we don't really worship, it's not really a god per se, it's like the virtues. And so don't like get caught up in the weird stuff. But if you introduce this to people that have something IQ, they're not gonna stick with you, right? And they're gonna, because you aren't as principled as Christianity or other real religions, you're gonna end up with crazy cultists, man. And unhinged humans are really evil. And that's why like even pagans realize the problem with like weird cultists. And so that's, I think, one of the main problems with paganism, is that you end up with cults, and cults can be incredibly destructive to society.
Yep. Even back then, idolatry was a problem. The very intellectual, let's just call them pagans for simplicity, pagan Romans, were disgusted by the popular masses crafting statues of Zeus, I mean Jupiter in their case, or other gods, because they said, no, these are incorporeal beings. Why are you giving them statues? Because that's what crazed people like to do. So again, it comes with a package, friend. Yeah, the virtues sound lovely. So I'll criticize, to be fair, Jordan Peterson too. He loves the morality of Christianity, but forgets the important thing that comes with that package, which is the supreme glory of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, we want all the virtues, all those wonderful morals that come from Christianity, but Christ being sovereign of the universe, maybe that's optional. That's what this guy's doing with paganism. So, I mean, we take shots when they deserve to be shot.
Yes.
Issue especially for Christianity. And if you take a symbolic approach, Eden was not literal, it is just representative of man's state before higher consciousness, before knowledge, then that also means that salvation is not real. There's not actually any heaven or hell. And that again causes a big issue for Christianity's claims.
Yes.
While pagan morality rests in this world, how we can observe the world actually works, the cycles of order and chaos, life and death, ancestry, these concrete observable things.
Insane that he's saying this, that Christianity has head in the clouds, but paganism is like real grit, the dirt between your fingers and the things you really see. No, paganism is like Aphrodite had sex with some random god and that created like some ocean somewhere. It's not observable things. It's crazier than Christianity. If you have a problem with Christianity's supernatural things, paganism is like full of insane, totally illogical explanations for natural phenomenon. So no, it doesn't have its hand in the gritty, real like things that happen on Earth. Christianity has like very practical law for specifically what to do in like certain law cases. If your neighbor has sex with somebody he shouldn't, or kills your ox, or steals something from you, like those are the real things that you end up turning to religion or some higher power for. Is like, what do we do in this difficult scenario that's really trying? It is not useful to turn to some mythology about how the earth was made by two seagulls like pooping on each other. That doesn't solve any practical questions.
Christianity's virtue, morality, all rests on this idea, this narrative that we were once immortal in Eden, we have fallen, and we will again receive salvation in heaven. Of course, if we follow Christ, or we will go to hell. And if that's not true, then none of its morality makes sense. It all falls apart. To believe in Christianity is to have blind faith in a reversal of all of the laws of nature at the last moment for the sake of man alone. And again, this is part of its appeal, this extreme idealism. Christianity calls on you to forgive your enemies, betray your own family, give up tribe, tradition, nation, wealth, and worldly power for the sake of a promised otherworldly reward in heaven. But these things which Christ asks you to renounce in the New Testament are all the things necessary for a people to survive and thrive in the real world, which makes Christianity even more unconvincing in this time of crisis in the West. To renounce tribe, family.
So he's saying real family men are not Christian, which I don't know if you know the stats, but I think the stats would show that Christians are pretty strong on the family values, and that atheist pagan weirdos not exactly strong in the family values. But he's saying the real family man, the real pillars of society out there are pagans, or should be pagans, because Christianity says you should forsake your family, i.e. quoting Jesus when Jesus says, I have not come to bring peace but a sword, and to turn a son against his father and a mother against her daughter-in-law. Fair enough. Like, Christianity calls you to abandon those who reject Christ. But Christianity also has been the number one driving force of family values and like societal advancement throughout the years. So I think that's a pretty shallow attack.
Michael, who was it that left unwanted babies outside of the Roman houses? Was it the Christians?
No, it was the pagans promoting abortion and whatever else.
Oh yeah, and then throwing babies in the dumpster, and then the Christians would pick them up because they valued human life.
How about
whereas the pagans
the
hated
sexually
weakness?
Degenerate femboys? Is that a Christian thing, or is that a Roman pagan thing? Oh wait, it's a Roman pagan thing. Like, the femboy degeneracy is definitely a Roman pagan thing. If you're complaining about like unmasculine virtues here, pagans definitely less masculine than Christians and less family oriented. The stats prove themselves out. So I don't know where this is coming from. He's pointing towards a virtue we agree with and trying to say he owns it when he does not.
Tradition to forgive your enemies is to depend wholly on the idea that you will be granted a personal immortality in heaven as a reward, and that the fate of your kin and your descendants on earth will not matter because the world will end anyway. We have to remember that every Christian since Christ, all the way through the Middle Ages, believed that the end of the world, Revelations, was coming very soon, like in their lifetime. This was
the Romans would never forgive their enemies, but they would tolerate entire sub-religions. Like when they conquer Greece, they're like, oh yeah, those are actually our gods too. And also they conquer the mini gods of Anatolia and go, oh yeah, those we also add them to the pantheon. Let's just keep the peace, baby. They're just as sad cucks as any rulers can be when it comes to trying to keep a society at large. So no, pagans also are not like some savage killing all the enemies all the time thing either. They compromise just as much as any people because they're flawed.
Belief held all the way throughout the Middle Ages. And if you think that the world is going to end in your lifetime or shortly after, that obviously is going to change how you act very much. Now, I know there will be lots of people in the comments saying that I'm mischaracterizing Christianity or that I don't really understand it. They will point to the warrior values of medieval Catholicism, but I am specifically talking about what Christ himself tells you to do in the New Testament, not later paganized versions of the religion. And so
Christ tells you to pick up a sword and go spread the gospel, which is what the warrior monks of Middle Ages were presumably doing, or like the monastic orders that went and crusaded were taking up their sword. And so no, Christ specifically also talks about fighting and defending values. And of course, Paul writes that it's worse to you're worse than an unbeliever if you won't provide for your family, which has got to be probably one of the strongest influences on family values in the West.
Compiled a ton of quotes here to back up what I'm saying. I'm just going to read a few of them because there's so many, but you can see them on screen. This is Matthew on the forgiveness of enemies. You have heard that it is said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Now, this is only one of many quotes which you can see on the screen here, where Jesus explicitly tells you to love your enemies, to not resist evil people, to not fight back, to actually feed and pray for your enemies, to not be tribalistic and love only those who love you, love only your own family and your own people, but actually to love everyone, even those who actively persecute you and seek out your destruction. And of course, he himself forgave his killers on the cross. Now again, people will say that I'm cherry picking these quotes. They will say that Jesus also said that he has come to bring a sword, not peace. But then let's read the rest of that quote too. Do not suppose that I've come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I've come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. This is one of many other quotes when he calls on you to abandon your family and nation and to join the tribe of God, where there are no more social, cultural, or racial, national divisions. Quote, so in Christ Jesus you are all children of God through faith. For all of you who are baptized into Christ have clothed yourself with Christ. There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female. For you are all one in Christ Jesus. If you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. And
So yeah, unified. I mean, we agree with all this, and I think he's fair enough
Mhm.
to say that Christ also talked about like being willing to abandon your old tribe and come into this new tribe. But what I think he's forgetting here then is that there's a fervent unity in this new tribe. So as much as you were called to leave our fathers and mothers and like be willing to leave our daughters and sons and whatever else and join to the new tribe, there's a fervent defense of this new tribe, right? Like to provide for your own family, fervently provide for the church. They were constantly giving towards the church. A lot of the accolades to the early church is that they're providing for other poorer churches, selling land as they needed to unite. And so there's a strong sense of unity amongst those in Christianity that has all the virtues that you'd want. And so yeah, he's missing that part of it, that this is a restructuring of your priorities.
quote. So I think,
I mean, I guess he's saying he disagrees. He thinks that instead of defending and unifying with those who are ideologically unified with you, i.e. other Christians, you should instead just defend people who share your genome, even if they are blue-haired femboys. Is that good for society? Should we defend ideological enemies that exist just because they are our half-brothers or somehow cousinly related to us?
I think you can see the problem here. Young men may be drawn to Christianity from trad edits on TikTok, but all of that is drawing upon European pagan culture and values.
He trashes trad edits, and here he is making like a gigantic trad edit.
And when you actually read what Jesus said in the New Testament, it's really not very appealing or empowering, especially given the, again, great social upheaval happening in the West now. In this time of crisis, people are being pushed to have more conservative values. That's always what happens when a crisis
My
hits.
gosh. Wait, pause. Not empowering. It's like not cool that you're an enemy of God and he has taken your guilt upon himself on the cross. You deserved wrath and he took it on himself in a display of both justice and mercy. So not ignoring justice because evil has to be punished, but mercy because we did not deserve to be saved. How could that not be cool? Whatever.
Well, also,
Rhetorical
Jesus
questions.
like comes in, speaking about what Jesus does, he comes in and kills all his enemies, and the birds, the carrion birds, feast upon them for days. Like that's the Christian God, like the New Testament Christian God, if you have a preference there. And so it's not like there's a lack of justice or like death to the enemies in the Christian virtue either.
And young men are beginning to feel that family, tribe, nation, the future generations are what give life meaning, and that these things have been pushed aside. These values have been abandoned. And so
There's still family, tribe, and nation, all in Christianity. It's just now the nation is in Christianity and the family is fellow Christians, and like all that still exists.
to throw these things away for the promise of personal immortality in heaven seems, as the European pagans believed, downright evil. Odysseus was actually offered immortality by Calypso in the Odyssey, but he rejected it in order to save his son, his wife, and his kingdom, in order to continue his bloodline and to win eternal glory. Now you could say, well, we shouldn't read the New Testament without the context of the later paganized Catholic tradition, and even if there are problems with the values espoused in the New Testament, Christianity is the traditional religion of Europe. And I myself
Catholic propaganda showing up again. Nestorians or other Easterns that were not influenced by Roman Christianity have very similar values of Catholics. So it was not the paganization of Catholics in the West that created cool, epic Teutonic order knights. You know, like monastic orders and strong Christian men existed also in China and in India and in Persia and in Ethiopia. So no, it was not paganization of Christianity that made it cool and based.
love the paganized Christianity of early Arthurian literature. The courtly, chivalric culture of the late Middle Ages was a wonderful thing, and it definitely had Christian influence. But if, as a Christian, you are espousing values which are directly contradicted by the words of Christ himself, that causes an issue. Firstly, because it shows that you are distorting the religion, the words of God, in order to align it with the pagan, the European pagan heroic worldview, which you already hold implicitly, as was done for most of the Middle Ages when no one could even read the Bible. And secondly, because this shows that Europe's pagan values and culture are actually more enduring, more primary than Christianity, because Christianity.
Find me the knightly orders prior to Christ. Like the greatest heights of Western civilization have been under Christianity, not under paganism. So no, it's not latent paganism that created chivalry or monastic orders or strong men or wealthy cities or whatever else. And when he says that most people couldn't even read and therefore really weren't Christian, they were really could they read pagan mythology but not Christian? Like, how do you think pagan myths were being distributed in a way that Christianity was not? Do you think people weren't speaking about Christianity either? They were only speaking about their old pagan gods, but they had to read about the Christian God? It's crazy.
Christianity must be bent to fit them, not the other way around. And if you have to distort Christianity to fit pagan heroic values, then why not just be a pagan? Why not return to the older pagan tradition, which already authentically fits the European heroic spirit and requires no interpretation? And this also is a very important point. The European pagan worldview and the countless European pagan texts, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Norse sagas, Irish heroic literature, this massive body of pagan literature and art now has a stronger claim to being traditional and relevant for Europeans than Christianity does. This may have not been the case 50 years ago when people were coming from a deeply Christian culture. But like I said, many young men now are coming from being raised atheists or just having no real religious affiliation. I recently went to a Catholic mass where I heard all about the coming kingdom of Israel, how evil the Egyptians and Babylonians are, how we're all sinners and must repent and so on. And none of this is compelling, appealing, or feels remotely relevant to me. In contrast, when I read the Aeneid, I hear about the glory of my ancestors and learn about their complex moral and theological views enshrined in beautiful, powerful, heroic poetry. This is a text which is relatable, inspiring, and directly relevant to me. At a certain point in the Middle Ages, Christianity was
complains about dissing old civilizations like the Babylonians, endorses reading a book about men thousands of years ago who worshipped false gods, who you claim you don't even believe are real, and who do their quests for the sake of said false gods. It's a double standard. If you can not relate to people who really lived and actually fought old civilizations like the Babylonians or Persians and whoever else, but you can relate to people who never lived, like those in the Aeneid, who fought for the sake of pagan gods who you don't even believe are real, I don't know what to tell you. That's more relevant to you?
somewhat synonymous with European culture.
Might add, I was reminded by the myth of, I'm so glad I took this, ironically, Michael, I took this Greek mythology class in college, because now I know these myths. Such a manly religion when Zeus takes Ganymede, a very handsome Trojan prince, as his concubine/lover, and then turns him to an eagle and makes him a cupbearer of the gods. Yes, I'm pretty sure this guy will be all over that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna embrace quote unquote tradition, the old ways of our pagan ancestors, you can't deny that there was some pretty awful stuff in there by any standard, right? Like the super ultra manly standard is gonna fail in cases like that with Ganymede, and the like super woke standard, if that's the standard, is obviously gonna fail because our ancestors were not woke either. So you're gonna find instances where they were very not woke as well. So like they will never be consistent and they won't fit your virtues perfectly. And the best thing about knights or Arthurian legends or whatever else isn't the Lady of the Lake, isn't like the magic. It's the virtues of the men, right? They defend honor and family, and they do forgive their enemies, and they're patient, right? They're masters over their anger. They're not given over to passions. That's the good things about them, is that they're dutiful, and they do their work as if they do it for the Lord. And they're fighting for God and country and whatever else. Whereas pagans are intrinsically selfish. And yes, there's like things about blood and honoring the fatherland, and dying for the sake of the fatherland. But most of pagan myths have those tragic heroes. Like you see the price they pay for their tragic sacrifice, and like they don't get anything out of it. Like what does Sisyphus get? Or any of these like tragic heroes who gave their lives towards the betterment of humanity? Their fate is like getting their liver eaten for all of eternity, or holding up the entire world, or pushing a stone up a hill. And like they don't have any reward for their sacrifice, and so it's not noble at all. It's almost like an anti-hero story of like, watch out, before you sacrifice yourself for the greater good, remember that you will gain literally nothing from it. It's kind of like telling you to not be the nail that stands out.
Culture and identity. But now, since Christianity was built on universalist foundations, it has inevitably become so universal that someone saying they're a Christian really doesn't tell you anything about them. The diversity of Christian beliefs is so various that it borders on absurd, and the largest Christian populations are in Africa and South America. So if you're a young Western man looking for meaning and purpose and spirituality, looking to understand yourself, your identity, your culture, Christianity doesn't really provide anything for you since its framework.
Is he claiming
my God.
that it's intrinsically foreign? He's like the largest Christian, or most Christians are in Africa and South America, i.e. not European, not whites. And so if you really want to be white, you gotta go back to paganism, because everybody knows that Christianity is actually African. It's actually not white. Like, what are you talking about? Obviously, the most European religion has got to be Christianity, because Europeans have been Christian for the longest of peoples, except for like Armenians, if you don't count them as European, or Ethiopians. But again, Europeans are right there with the Ethiopians as far as being Christian for the longest. And so that's a pretty weak call as well.
And he says that Christianity is so confusing because it doesn't tell you anything. Go back 2,000 years ago to Rome and ask them, are you a pagan? And say yes. That tells you absolutely nothing. Do they worship Isis? Do they worship Cybele? Do they worship some unique Celtic god that has been incorporated to the Roman Empire? Yeah.
And that's
it was just a confusing and not unified. It was just confused.
And that's what like the big strong men like Marcus Aurelius or others that people glorify today hated about paganism, was how diverse it was.
Work is so broad that it doesn't give you any identity which is specific enough to be relevant, to help you, to guide you. European paganism, in contrast, solves all of these problems in a holistic way. It's a holistic solution to our spiritual, cultural, and even political problems. The European pagan texts do not need to be reinterpreted or distorted to agree with various political ideologies or qualified in any way. They holistically...
Which ones, brother?
Mm-hmm.
Every single pagan text you've ever read has been viciously reinterpreted. Like, I think any mythological canon that you have to pick up on Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Norse mythology, Germanic mythology has been hand-selected by people who are specifically recreating the mythology so that it is cohesive enough to read. Because mythology is like crazy, it's like people making up stuff, and so everything contradicts itself. Zeus was born like 30 different ways, and your local 1800s interpreter had to pick one and put it in his mythology, and that's kind of the one we've stuck with. But back in the olden days, they certainly wouldn't have been unified, and they weren't unified until some 1800s guy had to decide which one he was going to pick for you. So it doesn't really solve anything, and not to mention that like even the collated, hand-selected, smoothed-out compendiums you have of mythologies today don't match with the other ones that were hand-selected and smoothed-out compendiums. Like the Astartu religion is similar, but is not the same as Greek mythology. And by that I mean like not just names are different, but like whole acts are different, and certain gods actually are different. They're different roles. So how is this unified? How is this more unified than Christianity? You have total contradictions amongst European paganism. What are you even proposing? Like a certain pantheon over another one? You should not call it European paganism then. You should call it Greek or Roman or Astartu or your Neo-Pantheon. But like this really doesn't solve any organizational challenges you might have.
Yeah, even in this book, Metamorphoses, I had to read by Ovidio. And he tried to compile as many myths and smooth them out as best as he could. Right off the bat, there are two accounts of creation. And again, this guy's going out of his way to smooth out all the strange beliefs out there to make them readable to his audience. And still, you're getting two accounts of creation, whereas in Christianity you have.
Tie together European spirituality, culture, history, identity into one faith which has the ultimate claim to tradition, a very strong historical case, and a tremendous appeal to young men in search of meaning, identity.
One faith. What is this one faith? What are you talking about?
And heroism in the modern world. Anyone who reads the texts of the Greco-Roman epic cycle, the Norse legendary sagas, Irish and Welsh heroic literature, will find a remarkable unity.
So he's giving lots of different literature, non-unified literature. He's saying they're all unified, even though a lot of them are also like ethnic pro, and they're like pro-ethnic to the disparity of other European ethnicities. So like they're inherently at odds with each other, because they'll say like the Romans are the best of all peoples, or the Greeks are the best of all peoples, and everybody else is a barbarian, or the Irish are the true best of all peoples. Like they disparage other Europeans. And so it's definitely not a European unifying thing, because the Poles fought the Bohemians, and the Bohemians fought the Germans, and the North Germans fought the South Germans and the West Germans, and the Danes fought the Swedes, and the Irish fought the Welsh. Like they all didn't really like each other. So these old pantheons and old gods and old mythos are not unified in that way. But he's saying there is a remarkable unity in the fact that they all share virtues that also Christians share, because they're just common human virtues of like defending family and love.
In the values and theology found in them, to the point that European paganism could be considered one religion with various branches, not unified by a shared god, but through a shared moral and theological outlook, which spanned from Greece and Rome to Ireland and Scandinavia, and persisted well into the Middle Ages despite Christianization. Therefore, it provides a specific identity. I am a Roman pagan, I am a devotee of Mars, but it also provides a broader pan-European heroic framework, which spans all of the history and cultures of Europe. To illustrate this, I'll read you two quotes. One is from the Norse.
So he tells us it's viciously sectarian. He's like, well, yeah, you might have people that are like, I'm a Roman pagan, I'm a devotee of Mars. Like, even within your subsect, so not only are you Roman pagan as opposed to Irish pagan or Norse pagan, but also now you're also a devotee of Mars. Like, you're super decentralized, scattered, different. Like, it's non-unifying by its very nature. Dumb.
Saga of the Volsungs, and the other is from the Iliad, and they express almost identical heroic fatalistic sentiments. And this is just one striking example of hundreds. First, from the Saga of the Volsungs. Quote, that same evening Signy came to her father, King Volsung, and asked to speak with him and her brothers in private. She told them about Sigurd's plans, including the fact that Sigurd had assembled an unbeatable army, and he intended to betray them. Now I beg you, she said, that you return to your kingdom and gather the largest army you can, and then come back here and avenge yourselves. Do not walk into this trap, because you won't fail to be betrayed if you don't do as I ask. Then King Volsung said, everyone will say that I swore, while still in my mother's womb, that I would never flee in fear from iron, nor from fire, and I have kept that oath all my days until now, and why would I not keep it in my old age? And no woman will mock my sons, saying that they feared to die. Everyone will die someday, and no one can escape death when his time has come. I say that we will not flee, but we will do everything we can in the boldest way. I have fought in 100 battles, sometimes with the larger army and sometimes with the smaller, and yet I've always had the victory. It will never be said that I fled, nor that I begged for peace. And now here's a scene between Hector and his wife Andromache in the Iliad. Quote, so Hector prayed and placed his son in the arms of his loving wife. Andromache pressed the child to her scented breast, smiling through her tears. Her husband noticed, and filled with pity now, Hector stroked her gently, trying to reassure her, repeating her name. Andromache, dear one, why so desperate? Why so much grief for me? No man will hurl me down to death against my fate. And fate? No man alive has ever escaped it, neither brave man nor coward. I tell you, it's born with us the day that we are born. So you can see how inspiring and heroic this stuff is, and how similar these sentiments are, all the way from Greece in 800 BC to Scandinavia to Iceland in 1000 AD. Now, if you're interested in more...
Do we share unity with like African mythology that also has men being brave or like fighting till their death? Because I guarantee there's, I mean, I'm not a big reader of African mythology, let me tell you, but I think the Lion King is based off some African mythology, and also has lions, people willing to like die for their family. So are we unified with Nairobi tribes now? I fail to see the unity here, except for like common virtues across literally every society that's ever existed in any meaningful way. Aztecs also had men who were willing to die for their family. Like every single human organization has shared at least these values. So they're not uniquely unifying to Europe.
Will he also embrace Incan pagans as his polytheist brothers?
Right. So yeah, it's certainly not a distinctive European unifying thing if he's going for like the race angle here. I guess if he's going for like a pan-humanism angle, that we all appreciate these virtues regardless of race, but clearly he's not. He's like insulting Christianity as being an African and South American religion. This sounds more African and South American than Christianity does.
In-depth textual breakdowns like this, consider joining my heroic literature course. The Greco-Roman section, which covers the entirety of the Greco-Roman epic cycle in depth, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Post-Homerica, which is the sequel to the Iliad that not a lot of people know about, and the Aeneid is complete, and we are now on the Norse section. After that, there's going to be an Irish and Welsh section, and then finally an Arthurian section. So it's ongoing, there's already hours. I think that it is worse, but most people don't know about it or recognize it as such. Even though European paganism is growing fast, if you tell most people on the street that you're a Roman pagan or you're a Satru, they probably won't know exactly what that means. But in other ways, the fact that European paganism is not yet organized or clearly defined is an advantage. Christianity has been worn thin by countless denominations, endless interpretations, and the cheapening effects of modernity. But European...
What? Okay. He's saying it's an advantage that it's disorganized because Christians have many denominations and that wears them thin, but Norse pagans...
Paganism, in contrast, provides the opportunity for a kind of spiritual and cultural reset. It provides the opportunity for us to build something new on the most ancient foundations.
Is so new we can make it up, but also it's ancient and goes back to our roots, and also is unified, but also is super diverse because you can be any sort of pagan you want, and like there's a million mythologies to pick from. He wants every piece of cake. He wants all the inconsistent pieces of cake. I have to say, I've listened to a lot of man pitches of different sorts. I've listened to Jordan Peterson. I've listened to the New Atheists. I've now listened to this guy. I've listened to Christians. I've listened to different factions of Christians. This one like gets it's almost like an AI attempt at making a new man philosophy, because it like gets the gist of like men want to kill people and men want to be seen as great men, which we do, but like doesn't get the how are we going to get there, like how does paganism get us there. He quotes like two things that he thinks are cool from different pagan mythologies, and then is like, that's how we get there. We read the Aeneid like a bunch of nerds, and then that somehow fixes society. Brother, I tell you it won't.
Two problems, glaring problems. As he was quoting all his books, all the lovely books, which are great read, they're very entertaining, very superstitious books too. Oh my goodness. Again, he likes the morals, he likes the virtues. Iliad, famous for the gods trying to play 4D chess with their human pawns, and they can't act on their own. They need human help because the gods are just so powerful that need silly little humans to help them out on their mission to accomplish their will. And the gods are often switching sides, famously in the Trojan War. Also with the Vikings. I may not look the part. I am very Danish. Thank you very much.
Denmark's in the
related
background.
To one of the kings. Yeah, I'm related to one of the kings in one of the sagas written in the Gesta Danorum by Saxo Grammaticus, Harald Wartooth. So again, very superstitious people, always talking about the gods interfering, playing around in human affairs, or different mythological creatures lurking in the forest, or interfering in the quest some grand quest in the story. Very religious people. Very religious people. And then, shall I talk? Do you want to talk about also one of the biggest problems with paganism and how transactionary it is, Michael?
Sure, there's so many problems with paganism, but yes, you can talk about the transactional nature of it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So, actually, before I do that, I wanted to address something that Augustine brought up very nicely in his book about all these virtues and morals. The philosophers love their virtues and their morals, justice, temperance, and whatnot. Where do they come from? Truly, that's actually a question that he asks. It's like, someone please tell me where these come from, because no one wrote them down. It would have been great if Zeus had a prophet like Moses who told you, write all my wonderful commandments so that my followers can be righteous and moral people. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. It's just some guy thousands of years later in the Roman or Greek world just decided, it's like, oh, it'd be really proper for us to be temperate. Honor is good. Yes, I'm going to write this down. Do the gods speak about honor? No. Zeus cheats on his wife and turns the woman that he cheated with into a cow so that his wife would not find the woman.
And that's
the
god.
Opposite of the virtue.
Yeah, that's your greatest god. Yes.
Yeah, or who's the woman that's married to Hephaestus? Is it Aphrodite who married the ugly god of the forge and metallurgy?
Hera, I don't know. I don't remember my.
I'm pretty sure it's Aphrodite. Hera is for the wife of Zeus. So let's just go with Aphrodite. But you probably know who I'm referring to. Otherwise, dear viewer, she famously cheats on her husband, who is very ugly, and the gods have a great time about this. They just love trolling each other. They love torturing people for being petty. There was this one time Athena. Actually, I'm glad I took this class. Athena tries to play a pan flute, and a satyr, the half human, half goat, a mythological creature, mocks her for this, and she flails the creature, skins the creature alive, because he didn't like being made fun of. So, first First problem that you see. Where are these written moral codes that men like him love to talk about? I have no idea. Someone just made them up along the way. Two, if you want to say that the gods sent them, the gods are one of the most immoral creatures, more than humans actually, because at least humans have consequence. If a man cheats on his wife and gets caught, that can die. So there's some consequence. The gods have faced zero consequences ever, pretty much. The worst consequence is Hades getting, short end of the stick and having to rule the underworld. But is that really a consequence? He's still immortal, still has a realm, has a wife, just gets to live for eternity. No consequence. Oh my goodness. So, and then worst of all, these gods are so impotent, truly. They're not omnipotent like Yahweh. When Augustine questions, how powerful really are these gods? He says, if you run to Jupiter and ask him, or you can just say, I don't know, Aphrodite actually. Let's just go with Aphrodite. You go to Aphrodite and ask her for some wine. Yeah, I have water here. Aphrodite, can you give me some wine? She's going to giggle at you and say, no, you need to go to Dionysus because he's the god of wine. It's like, what a silly way to divide reality into these strange spheres of influence. You might as well just have god of towels or god of clothes or the god of the house. It really got that ridiculous. That's actually a concern that philosophers had. It got so out of hand and ridiculous. It got gods for everything. So there's that. And finally, what I wanted to get to after that long setup was that paganism, whether he likes it or not, has to involve the gods, who are very real, were very real to the Romans back in the day and the Greeks, very real beings. They're very transactional. The deal is, you worship the gods, you provide offerings and sacrifice, and they give you blessing. Calamity is done away with in your land because you're doing what you're supposed to do, and the gods fulfill their end of the bargain. Last time I checked, Rome was sacked multiple times before Christians were even walking around the planet. Rome was famously sacked by the Celts, and then they were defeated by Hannibal, had to rebuild the army from scratch. And you can imagine all the other obvious... who was the fake Christian? Julian the Apostate. Famously tries to revive paganism, dies in battle, not even in battle, like on the way to Persia. So even at their most basic duty, these gods fail utterly. Not only do they need help from humans sometimes, but also they fail in the purpose of their existence, which is to give blessings to humans as long as they are worshipped. It's worthless. Why are you doing this? Augustine rightfully points out that if calamity happens to Christians, it's because God is sovereign and he actually has communicated that he has let this happen before in his sovereignty for a purpose. When these gods let bad things happen, even though the humans are fulfilling their duties to the letter, they're being moral, whatever that means, to the God's eyes, giving sacrifices, which is really the most important thing, more than being moral. Doing the sacrifices and rituals is the most important thing. Calamity still comes. These gods are useless. I'm done, Mike. I think I've talked for long, Michael, if you don't want to say anything.
Yeah, I think that's totally valid, is that the actual boots in the ground practice of these things isn't, if you say, so I say I buy the whole thing. I buy the arc. I'm like, yes, the best way to be a manly white European guy is to suddenly become some sort of pagan. And, one time I was reading Percy Jackson and I loved Ares. And so I'm going to be a European pagan with a devotee to Ares because Ares is cool, he's the god of war, and he's manly and has big muscles. Okay. What does that entail day to day, month to month? What does that actually mean, boots in the ground? And like you said, Sebastian, the actual practices of these things aren't reading the Aeneid, reading the Iliad. I guess you can do that. And, there's some source material there. But the day to day is you somehow pray to Ares and he gives you things, right? There's some devotion here to these gods, and it involves weird pagan stuff. And if if your life isn't turning out well, is it because you haven't done the worship good enough? And like that's how you end up with escalations of worship. Of like at first it's just having a statue of Ares in your house, and you like sprinkle some incense, or like you give a sign to it every morning, and like that's good enough. And basically you're still an atheist, and you just like are giving a sign to the virtue of Ares. But like as soon as your life isn't going well, or you suffered cowardice at some point, and like you're feeling shame about it, if you're really devoted to this whole paganism idea, you're gonna be like, well, I wasn't devoted enough to Ares. And so whether or not you believe Ares is like real or not, you up your level of pietism to Ares, because you want to like extra punish yourself for cowardice and extra inculcate the goodness of bravery and courage as a virtue. And so now instead of just giving a sign or some incense to Ares, you like cut yourself or give a giant tattoo on yourself. And anytime you suffer cowardice, you like, bleed yourself out. Well, now you're like some weird flagellant, and now you see how like flagellism comes, or you see how child sacrifice comes, or animal sacrifice, or like all the freaky things that happen with paganism and like pietistic overload. It's because there's no bounds. You're making your own rules, and your own rules often are crazy. And so what does boots in the ground neo-paganism look like? It looks like the crazy rituals of old that we are very glad to be done away with. So it's not just the virtues you're inculcating here. It's like all the trappings of worship, which are quite the trap. Pagan worship is disgusting. Why we don't like it.
And to infuse modernity with a fresh spirit that has been preserved for us in the heroic literature of our ancestors, and most of all, preserved for us in our hearts.
To support this channel and gain access to hours of extra content and the Ark's private community.
Okay, there you go. We weren't missing much. Any final thoughts, Sebastian, on neo-paganism?
It is just not even by its own standards. It fails. It's such a bad religion. Why would, rhetorical question, why would anyone go to this? You can't avoid the gods. The values were made up by some philosophers thousands of years ago. They didn't come from the gods. It's just some human opinion. And the gods are useless. Those deities are useless. Instead, come to the true God who actually has a say in create. Oh yeah, I'm going on so many tangents. The gods didn't even create the universe. They spawn out of the universe. Mm-hmm. Because matter in Greek mythology has always existed. So the gods are just spawning into existence. Or they're born, from other gods. Whatever, that's another tangent. Yahweh is literally infinitely more powerful than any of these sad losers, because he created all matter, because he's beyond matter, time, and space. Would you look at that? Now that's a powerful God right there. And then also, he is both just. He's gonna. I know many Christians don't like to talk about this, but infidels, sinners, those who are not covered by the blood of Christ, are going to be spending a very, very, very long time suffering in hell. And that's by God's doing. He has declared so himself. He's a just God who punishes evil doing. Evil does not go unpunished, even if from our sad human perspective, it looks like evil people got, quote unquote, away with it. They're not going to get away with it. God has said something himself. He's going to take care of every misdeed. Every action will be taken into account when he comes to judge the living and the dead. But that would all be just, sad news. Because we would all be screwed. Because even by pagan standards, we all fail at being virtuous or moral or heroic or noble, whatever word you want to throw in there. We would be damned. The gods would completely ignore us because of how sad and embarrassing we are. But when we were sad, pathetic, and embarrassing, and enemies of God, he showed his love, mercy, true mercy and compassion to us by offering us eternal life. But from himself, this was a gift from him. And anyone, doesn't matter your nationality, doesn't matter your background, doesn't matter your deeds or lack of deeds, because he doesn't care about that. He cares about your heart. anyone who turns to him in humility and repentance can have true everlasting life, true glory, not some sad, made-up human glory that the pagans loved to talk about back in the day. Look how Alexander the Great ended up. Yeah, you remember him, but died and everything just exploded pretty much by God's doing. I was just reading Daniel. All by God's doing, his empire crumbled to dust. The gods couldn't stop Yahweh from them just dismembering his empire. So he'll give you true glory, true honor, and the best part is he will call you friend, son, daughter, brother, sister. You will be part of a real family. You will be truly loved. Humans fail to give true love so often, even parents to their kids, sadly enough, even neighbors to each other. But God will give you true love, and you will be part of a great family, and you will be part of his kingdom. A true kingdom, not the sad imitations that humans try to set up for the past 1,000 years. So we call our audience, we call this gentleman and all pagans to repent and come to the true, mighty, everlasting, omnipotent God who is sovereign over everything that happens on the earth and will happen, and who is willing to forgive his enemies, not out of weakness, but out of a position of power and compassion. We call everyone to turn to him instead.
Amen. That's why we found our cause in serving the Lord, the one and only Jesus Christ. I've been Michael, the man behind the machine, and to my front has been
Sebastian, the curator.
If you want to see the rest of our episodes, you go to Spotify or iTunes or wherever you might find your podcast. We're also on YouTube and Facebook, of course. You should comment. Let us know how dumb we are or how great paganism is. We'll respond to you in the chat. There was also, this guy, I would be remiss to note that his content is mostly negative, i.e. like this is his most positive thing, is that like here's the values of paganism, but most of the views come from secret history you don't know, and like really Christianity is negative for all these reasons, and it's actually like a schism of Zoroastrianism. That's what this whole video is about, is that Zoroastrianism is like the OG bad religion and that it spawned Christianity, which is a insane take for several reasons. First of all, because Zoroastrianism is like heavily influenced by Christianity, and then he has the gall to say the similarities between Reformed Zoroastrianism and Christianity, that Christianity is copying Reformed Zoroastrianism, which is ass backwards because it took Christianity. Anyways, this one made me really mad. The one we just watched was just bad. The Zoroastrian one is like fake history bad. We don't always react to this kind of stuff. So all I say is, you look at our other episodes, we don't always react to this kind of thing. We have lots of stuff we don't always react either. We have like positive positions of Christianity. So here we are refuting pagans. But we also promote the virtues of Christianity as well. So if you're curious on that, check out our other episodes. Until next time, we will talk about something completely different. Thanks for listening. Bye.